Hey everybody, Kelly with Scraps and Photographs here for Kendra's card challenge. This is number 2. So this is just going to be a kind of quick walkthrough as to how I set up and put all of these cards together, because it is a little bit of work. So what I'm doing is I'm going through each individual card sketch and comparing it to the cutting guides to see what the orientation is of the pieces that I'm cutting out, because basically that tells me whether or not I can use a directional 6x6 pattern paper versus a multi-directional pattern paper. So I'm going to show you what that means. So I'm going to go through my paper pad, and this is what I mean by a directional pattern paper, where you turn it on its side, it doesn't look right. This is multi-directional, you can turn it any way and it works just fine. So then what I did was I marked all of the pieces on the cutting guide with a little star, just something to notate that this piece is going to be rotated. And that really helped me determine which 6x6 papers I was going to use from this pad, because I didn't want to use something that, you know, was going to look really kind of awkward, or if I rotated it, the card wouldn't have looked as nice. So I put the sketches on the side, and then I started getting to work on pulling my pattern papers out. So I actually did it in advance, and I wanted to save you time from me sitting there and deciding which ones I was going to use, because it did take me a little while to determine what I wanted to, work with. But I basically flipped through all of the papers, tried to separate them by ones that could be multi-directional, ones that had to be one directional, and then decided which papers were going to go with, which cutting guides. So once I kind of figured out which ones were directional, which ones were multi-directional, I just put them all together and figured out that I could make 2 different sets of cards with these without it looking too weird, and then decided that I was going to go with these 6 for the first set. So the problem that I ran into with this is that I pulled the cut apart sheet out, which left me with only 5 papers. And then decided to use the cut apart sheets just to kind of pull everything together at the very end and decorate. So because I pulled that last cut apart sheet out of my stack, I only had 5 papers for the second set. So I went through my stash and I found papers that coordinated well enough. And then once I was happy with that, we decided to just get going and start cutting. So the next thing I did was I labeled some bags because I knew I wanted to make more than one set of these cards. And the important thing to remember is that when we start using our cutting guide, we want to start with the longest line. So I froze it right there so you can see that line across the bottom for number 2. And then after that, you work your way down to the smallest cut. So you always look for the longest line so that you make sure you're cutting your pieces in the right sizes. And then as I finished each sheet, I started bagging all of the pieces so that I wouldn't get confused and I wouldn't lose any of them, because some of them are really small. And then I just sped through the rest of it. Of course, this video was sped up a lot, so I'm not quite this fast in my cutting, but you get the idea. I think all in all, the cutting took me probably about 45 minutes, but I had a little bit of distractions, and I do like to watch videos while I craft. So I may have gotten distracted by a movie. And then this last big piece on paper number 6 needed to be cut diagonally, and I don't trust my paper trimmer, so I went ahead and I used a ruler and a pencil and traced it out. I pulled some coordinating cardstocks, and then I started cutting them down into the sizes that I knew I was going to be using. So that's your standard 5.5 by 4 1/4, as well as some 5 1/4 by 4 inch pieces, because I knew I was going to use some mats with my card bases. And then I started going through each individual card, and then matching up the colored pieces that I knew I wanted to use, and then throwing them back in the bags. You can see me making some notes there as to what additional pieces I'm going to need to cut in what colors and what sizes, to kind of try and streamline the process so that I could do all of my cutting at once, and then do all of my assembling after that, so I didn't have to keep dragging the paper cutter on and off the table. So what I did off screen was I went ahead and I cut out all the extra pieces that I needed, including punching out some of these circles, so that I could just focus on getting all of these cards assembled. So I started with bag number 1, took out all the pieces and just started gluing away. I also went ahead and I took out all of the embellishments and the die cuts that I wanted to use, and I tried to split out some of the bigger pieces like the cats, because I knew I wanted them to be kind of the focal pieces on the cards, and then started kind of putting the cards together and finishing them as I went. That overall, and this includes, all of the cutting and assembling, even going back to the marking up, the sketches, and the cutting guides, and even just figuring out which 6x6 pad I wanted to use, because goodness knows, I have so many of them that I've collected over the years. This project probably took me a little over 3 hours. But I can't begin to tell you how good it feels to use up some of my 6x6 pads, some of my really old stash, because I've had this probably 5 years more. I don't know. You guys can tell me, because I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who has this still in their stash, or at least I'm going to tell myself that, because it makes me feel a little bit better. So this was my first walkthrough tutorial for Kendra's card challenge, and this is again card challenge number 2. I hope you guys join us. It's on through the end of June and it's so much fun. The cards are just adorable and I'm so excited to play around a little bit more and make another set of these. But feel free to let me know if you have any questions and I'll make sure to put the link down below. Thanks!